Welcome to the 24th of July, everybody. Good morning. This is Connor McIver, Connor with Honor, Santa Clarita Openhouses.com. We're going to talk about what's happening in real estate. In addition, we're going to get into the commissions concession question that's going to be on everybody's mind here coming very soon, because no longer as a real estate buyer are you going to see any kind of offering in the multiple listing service as far as what a seller is willing to pay the agent you're choosing to represent you. So let me talk about how that's going to impact buyers and sellers at least a little bit, just break through the upper part of that in today's show. And then, of course, when people contact me and want more information about it, plenty of time to put all of that together so they know what's happening in that current field. So let's talk about what's happening. We have currently 472 active real estate listings on the market here in Santa Clarita Valley. That's going to cover all the cities, and that's going to be all residential. So your single family residences, your condominiums, and your townhomes, so everything residential. That's where we are. Single family residences, just to kind of catch everybody up, that's what you think it is, a standalone home, but they're different configurations of single family residences. Some are attached, so they still have a real front and a real backyard, but they share some common wall with a neighbor's home. And of course, this is back in the day, so the builder would be able to put more properties in a particular area. What's interesting is those areas that have those houses, the attached homes, what's interesting is the areas that they're in, there's still actually even more land that's been allotted for those than current builds now, because the lot sizes have dramatically changed in this market. You can see in the new housing, houses seem to be a little bit closer to each other. In addition to that, some of them have what's known as a zero lot line. So basically a part of your neighbor's property, while it isn't attached to your house, it's in your yard. So if they need some kind of access in the future because something happened inside that wall, let's say if there's a pipe in there, it broke, an electrician needs access to get into that wall but can't come in from the inside, has to go from the outside, whatever it may be, there'll be something in your documentation on your home purchase that allows for, with adequate notice, for some kind of utility company, contractor, whatever, that the seller requests to be able to get access to that particular part of the property that happens to be sharing a space in your backyard, if you will. And basically, you have your fence, you're going to have a portion of their house, then your fence continues. So it basically makes a portion or a border of your backyard. Anyway, so these are the different property types available, and that's what currently I'm talking about as I speak about on the show. New listings this past 7 days, 75, 48 have sold within the last week, and right now we're watching 52 in escrow. One of the things also is time on market. In Valencia, California, monitoring the last 30 days of activity, and here we're about to close out July 2024, I've been noticing that days on market time frame total is 35. So when a property gets put on the market, residential real estate in Valencia, typical 3+2 configuration, that's the average type of property. When that property hits the market and it's priced at a good value, at market rate, that property goes in about 35 days. So it doesn't take very long. And if we have a 30-day escrow time period, which is usually when a real estate buyer buys a residence, usually, depending on other circumstances, if they have something to sell, if the transaction's contingent, if it's a particular loan type that requires more time versus a conventional loan, which a lender typically can close pretty quickly, 30 days or maybe less in some cases. Other types of loans may have more moving parts. Example, a veteran's administration loan for a veteran. There could be some times that takes a little bit longer, because when they're ordering these different providers that have to go out and access the property, appraise the property, these are particular types and specialized appraisers, because they are assigned to work with the Veterans Administration. When there are a lot of VA loans closing, of course, that market's extremely overwhelmed and busy. To get them scheduled is going to take an increase of time. But 35 days is pretty incredible, and that means from beginning, the day that property goes on the market active till it sells 35 days. Castaic 42 up 7 days. from Valencia, but very, very nominal. Then you look at Saugus and Newhall. They're all right about that 30 to 40 day mark as far as how long it takes for a property to go from being listed for sale to finish. With those, when you monitor other types of activity in the market, such as properties that are having their prices changed, right now we have a lot of properties, 60 to 70 every 7 days, that are experiencing some kind of a price change. So of course you're going to ask, what are they going up or coming down? Majority of those are reductions in price. Not huge numbers. I'm not seeing massive reductions, but the 3 and the 4 and maybe up to $10,000 reductions, depending how long the property has been on the market. And that's also going to carry with it maybe an emotional seller queue. So if the seller doesn't get any offers on their property, a lot of the time they're wondering if there's something wrong with their house. Maybe they're looking at their residence as being a certain way and other people see it nowhere near as much as the seller loves it do these people that are looking at the residence. So there's some confusion. So the seller starts to do this blaming thing, and I've watched this happen. And I have to say, this is just what this market is bearing at the time for your residents. And of course, eventually everything works out. But when a seller's doing a price reduction, you have to look at a few things. You have to see where you're priced. You have to find out if, did you actually bite off a little bit more than you could chew? Did you get a little bit too happy in the beginning and price your home above and beyond what comparables are? Or maybe you were fortuning or having some kind of a premonition or maybe of things to come. Maybe you think, okay, well, my house is worth this much now at $900,000, for example. But the way the market's going with the limited inventory, I bet you I could probably get $930,000. So you talk to your agent, it's going to depend on the agent. Some agents might say, I'm sorry, I'm unable to take your listing because it's going to be something that's going to sit on the market a long time, because I know it's not going to sell at $930,000. And then they disappear into the wild blue yonder. And then other agents will say, sure, let's give that a try. Whoever you hire. I don't know if you like, A or B or some version in between, two extremes, right? Somebody saying, oh, sure, whatever, if you want $1 billion for it, let me put it in for $1 billion in the multiple listing service. But hire who you will. Having said that, though, setting that price at the beginning is important. And then if you are going to reduce the price, you want to see where you are. And yes, if you did the $930,000 thing when it should have been $900,000, then dropping it maybe more closer to $900,000 would be beneficial. And that would, be a pretty substantial price reduction. I'm not seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing, the $2,000 and the $3,000 and the $5,000 price changes as we're in this particular market. And when those prices change, then that days on market timeframes really starts to hold true. So if there was an overpriced house in Valencia, California, and it was on the market 30 days, and then they did a price reduction and put that property where it normally would be, what a good value would be, then we have that 30, 35 day time frame picking up after that. So it still holds true even in the market where properties haven't sold because they were priced too high out of the chute. So that's what's happening there. Also, you're going to see a big change, as I was talking about before, with regards to concessions. Right now, if you look on the multiple listing service on most of the online sites, even Santa Clarita openhouses.com, you're going to see an offering of commission. That's going to be removed because of a lawsuit. Now, the question is going to be, now that if you want to sell your house after August, what is that going to look like? First, you have to decide a couple things. Well, first you have to decide if you're going to try to sell it yourself or try to get an agent to sell it for you. So if you do decide, instead of DIYing it, to actually contact a local agent and have them come over and interview them, which I think you should do anyway, that you don't want to cut out any potentiality when it comes to selling your residence. In addition, there's some online systems that I think are interesting before I get into commission. And what they do is they say, we're going to help you sell your house very simply. You're not going to have to do anything. You're not going to be messed with. And even there's some websites that have sports characters on the stage. and somebody brings up they're going to have to sell their house to move, and they go, oh, I'm not selling my house to schedule buyers and to look at contracts and do negotiations. So then all that comes up, and then somebody jumps up from the audience, oh, you can use this to sell your house. Well, I guess we're selling. That commercial, those commercials, I don't know what it's worth to be inconvenienced. And when I sit down with my sellers and they're talking about a company like that, usually there's provisions built into those listing contracts that those properties are sold at a further market discount. And I've seen this. So if a property in that program doesn't sell in a particular time frame, there is a mandatory price reduction or price changed at a certain percentage point. Then you have other websites and other corporations or companies out there with regard to real estate that say they're going to buy your house from you so you can avoid all the stress and all the heartache and all the... I don't know. You have to answer the question yourself. If you have a good agent, usually they're going to be worth their weight in gold because they shield you from a lot of the nonsense. If I have something happening in a transaction and I don't have to tell my seller at that particular point because my experience leads me to believe it's something that, number one, isn't in writing. Whatever is in writing, it's conveyed. But somebody talking about something that really, for example, if I'm getting feedback on a seller's house and somebody's telling me that they don't like the house because of where it's located, my seller can't fix that, see? And taking that to them, I'm sure they know that. I'm sure that was part of our discussion. If there's, these massive power lines floating over the exact top of their house and everybody that walks in, their hair stands on end, I'm sure we've already had that conversation. But there's no point to bother them with nonsensical verbiage out of somebody's mouth that really they don't need to hear their opinion. So protecting my seller as we move through that process, if something comes up that is going to affect their real estate transaction, absolutely. But I don't know how much inconvenience, thinking back since I've been doing this since 1998, reflecting, it's really not that inconvenient. Showings, especially in this market, don't take long. And when they do, they can be coordinated over an open house on a weekend, right? It doesn't have to be open all the time. Or maybe if you only want to show it after 6 to 7 p.m., that can be done too. If somebody is out there wants to buy your house, they're going to make arrangements to come see your house. I promise you that. So back to the concessions thing, you're going to be not seeing any more public offerings for buyer's agents online. You're also not going to see what those agents are paying to have, or those sellers are paying to have hire that listing agent to list the residence. My recommendation is find yourself a local real estate expert. Before they show you houses, very, very soon, they're going to be required, if not already, it's going to be put into the rules. They're going to have a signed buyer-broker agreement with you. That's a new thing for a buyer. So now if you're going to try to find that explanation, you start to go to your relatives and friends, they're going to say, well, I never had to sign anything to see a house. I just made a phone call, went out with the agent. They showed me 5 or 6 houses, and I selected one. Well, that's the old time. Now is new. So they're not going to know a lot of information about this buyer-broker contract or this agreement you're going to sign. On there, it's going to have what you're going to pay your agent to represent you, if anything. But that's part of that agreement, so you need to understand that going in, and that should be explained. For the sellers out there, of course, you're hiring your agent to list your residence. That's fine. And then you're going to be paying them a particular commission to do so. There's going to be part of that discussion that's going to say, hey, Jack, are you willing to pay a buyer's agent to bring a buyer into your residence and have them represent the buyer? I'm representing you as the seller and we'll be done. Or are you going to pay me to represent the buyers on the other side exclusively, not offering a commission to other agents that are working with tons of buyers in the market? One agent might have so many buyers, but 10,000 agents in a local market are going to probably have a lot more buyers than that one. What is that worth to you? And then on the other end of that, those buyers, because they are a working part of this transaction, the buyers have a choice too. What are they willing to pay an agent to represent them and be on their side during the transaction, if anything? Or are they going to be saddling up with the real estate seller's listing agent to also represent them? You have the seller, you have the buyer, and you have a single agent in between. That's called dual agency. That agent is allowed in California to represent both the seller on the listing and the buyer of the same listing. There are other states that outlaw that practice known as dual agency. California, if they will in the future, I don't know. That has been something that's been talked about probably just about, well, longer than they've been talking about interest rates coming down before this election. I'm Connor with Honor. I hope this helps muddy up the water just a little bit and making it hopefully a little bit more clear than mud. When you're ready, reach out to me. I do appreciate you watching today, and I bid you farewell. We'll talk to you soon. We'll be back tomorrow with tomorrow's show. I'm Connor with Honor. Over and out.